Okay, looks like we're on. So Doris, you may begin. We are live stream.
Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. It's in person or Zooming. The Zoning Land Use Committee always has good attendance, and I thank you all for that and for your continued commitment. This is actually the third project in the commercial C8 triangle that we're looking at, and this application is a little different. This is they're height-wise, they're building as of right. They are looking for a special permit for a non-permitted use, but use for a daycare center. And so we're interested to hear the application. And this is, if we remember all the other discussions, the size of the building is basically what is permitted under current zoning, and there's no extra height. There is just a change of use.
Okay. So I guess, Jay, if you're ready, I made you able to share your presentation on your screen.
Let me see if I can figure it out. I have it. Are you able to see this?
Can I just know which firm Jay is from?
I have my own firm, Jay Goldstein, Law Office of Jay Goldstein. I've presented before.
We can see it fine.
Yeah, you can see it? Okay, good. I've presented before you in the past on another school project a couple of years ago. So good evening, everybody. My name is Jay Goldstein. I appreciate your time tonight. I'm here on behalf of the Learning Experience, which is a daycare. With me is Jeannie Cave, who is one of the operational administrators of the school, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So we're here for a special permit, as mentioned, by section 7319 of the zoning resolution to allow a daycare center in a building that is being built. So we're not asking to construct the building. We're not asking for any sort of waivers or permissions in terms of the building. What we're asking for is simply allowing the use, which isn't allowed as of right, in this zoning district. The premises in question is 8902 Fifth Avenue. So if you can see on your screen, it's the corner of Fifth Avenue and 89th Street. It has 107 feet of frontage on 89th Street and 75 on Fifth Avenue. It's a new building. It's a partially six-story building with a cellar. And the school is looking to, or proposing to occupy a portion of the first floor along 89th, the entire second floor, and a portion of the third floor. Again, this is the building. It's under construction. To my knowledge, it's not occupied yet. It's still under construction as we speak. But this is the corner looking at the intersection of 89th and Fifth Avenue. The layout of the building, the school's proposing to take about 13,500 square feet. The cellar, as you can see, is going to be parking for the remainder of the building. There'll be an elevator lift from the first floor along Fifth Avenue that accesses the cellar parking. The remainder of the first floor along Fifth Avenue is going to be commercial, with the school occupying a portion of the building and their main entrance along 89th Street. There's also a separate entrance for additional community facility and commercial that occupy the upper floors, which I'll show you in a minute. The first floor of the school will be about 3,700 square feet. As you can see, there's a vestibule. You walk into the building with a vestibule, then reception and offices. This helps ensure that the children are safe, that nobody can come into the building unless they're admitted and known to the school. Also on this floor, there'll be 2 classrooms that can accommodate 18 students with 4 teachers. The entire second floor will be occupied by 8 classrooms, about 7,350 square feet, 95 students and 12 teachers. There's also a lounge and an indoor play area for the students. The third floor, or part of the third floor, 2,500 square feet, will be occupied by 3 classrooms, as well as a small pantry, 39 students and 3 teachers. The remainder of this floor will be a separate community facility with separate entrances not associated with our use. The fourth floor will be partially community facility, partially commercial offices. And then the fifth and the small 6th floor will be commercial space. This is the streetscape you can see of what the proposed building will look like along 89th Street. This portion in the middle is the school's entrance. It'll be a dedicated entrance to the school. We have a dedicated staircase and a dedicated elevator within the building to ensure the safety of the students. The school itself, as I mentioned, is a well-established school. They operate under a license from Article 47 of the Health Code. They have 240 locations in 33 states, including a number of locations in New York City itself. They service ages 6 weeks to 5 years old. This building is proposed to have 152 students with about 19 teachers, coming primarily from the Bay Ridge area. And the hours of operation will be Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Again, not all of the students the entire time, but we have a staggered arrival wherein parents who have to leave early for work or come home late from work can drop off their children at the school, and it's a service the school provides. We anticipate the majority of the students coming between the hours of 7:30 and 8:30 a.m. and leaving between 4:30 and 5:30 p.m. But there will be other students who, based on the parents' work schedule, will be there longer, earlier or later. In terms of arriving and departing the school, we anticipate 40% of the students will arrive by foot, 30% by private transportation, and 30% by public transit. There's our subway station and a number of the bus lines that run close to this location. In terms of the findings, or in terms of the BSA application, we have to make 4 findings in order to qualify for the change of use or to allow the daycare to operate in this location. One of which is that we have to search the area to find an alternate location in a zoning district where the use is as of right. So we've done there are certain criteria that we have to meet in order for the site to be valid or to be a contender. So we did a catchment area. You can see, I don't know if you can see, but it's the purple dotted line. That's where the students will primarily come from. Any alternate building has to be about 13,500 square feet with 3,600 square feet at the ground floor to accommodate the requirements of DOH, Department of Health, which says that 2-year-olds can't be above the first floor. An additional 10,000 square feet between the second and third floor, because again, DOH says you can't have any students above a third floor. Any alternate site has to have a dedicated entrance, primary staircase dedicated to the school, and an elevator dedicated to the school. So when we did this search, we came back with one site in the area that potentially met our needs. That was located at 9201 Fifth Avenue, the corner of 5th and 92nd Street. The building's still in its planning stages, so it's not even definite that it's going to be built. And the asking price on the rents far exceeds that which we're paying at this location. So therefore, based on those findings, it's not a valid site or not a viable option. The next finding is that we're within 400 feet of a residential district or a district where this use is as of right. So you can see from this that we're directly across the street from an R6B zoning district, which allows for this school use as of right. The final 2 findings are kind of go hand in hand, that there's a separation between noise and traffic and that we can ensure the safety of our students. So the school's working with, or through the application, we're working with DEP and DOT to ensure that there's no air quality or noise issues. And we're working with DOT's school safety program to ensure that the operational plan for the students arriving and leaving the school can adequately protect the students. Additionally, this is a daycare, so none of the students arriving or leaving will be walking alone. The school has a strict policy that the only people who can pick up a student is one of the parents or a guardian who's pre-approved. And as I showed you before, there are a number of obstacles to get into the school before you can actually see the children. So that, given all of those measures, we are confident that we can protect the students. And through the DEP review, we're confident that the air quality and noise will be adequately separated, that we don't have an issue. If there are any specific questions, I'm happy to answer them at this time.
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
You mentioned about most of the enrollment will be local, and in reality, though, do you have any vehicular traffic pertaining to traffic? you have the post office on one side, you have an empty lot on the other, and that lot is for sale, and something's going to be built there also. So
Right.
that needs also to be considered.
No, it's definitely considered. It's part of our traffic analysis as well. We gave in that we do anticipate probably 30% of the students arriving by private vehicles. So in working with DOT, they'll usually put or suggest a no standing sign in front of the building to allow for drop-offs, and it could be tailored that it's during arrival and dismissal so that it's not disruptive to the evenings, not disruptive to the middle of the day when we don't have students coming and going.
I have a few questions.
Oh, and I'm sorry, Steve, Ann Fludico had her hands up first. Ann, you just have to take yourself off mute.
Jay, if the current tenant that is your client should discontinue use of the space,
Mm-hmm.
what is the certificate of occupancy going to read? And what would be the situation should that be the case? What other kind, will the space be dedicated to school use going forward?
The space will be dedicated to school use as long as the school is there. The C of O will say school use pursuant to BSA approval. Any change to the C of O, should the school leave the space, if you want to use it for any other use besides the school use, would have to go back to BSA and back to DOB for approval.
But if the school use were to continue under a different entity with a submission to BSA to clear the change of ownership or change of tenancy, that would be acceptable.
Correct, with the permission of BSA.
Okay, and is this also a day nursery with children under 2?
I think it's 6 weeks to 5 years old.
6 weeks, okay. Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, actually, Ann asked 2 of my questions. What does it mean, Jay, when you said that it's going to be a dedicated stairway? How is it separated from the other property or the other businesses that will be in that building?
So it's, hold on. The other businesses, so along Fifth Avenue, the commercial district, the commercial use only accesses through that front. And you can see over here that we have a staircase within our space that is solely dedicated to our space. Once you hit the 4th, 5th, 6th floor, that staircase ends. So it is dedicated to our use.
Okay, if the school was not to operate there, say after 3 or 4 years, it determined it wanted to move, another school could go there, which would require a dedicated, I assume, a dedicated entry and egress. Am I wrong? Am I right?
The schools in general would, especially given the fact that schools are not as of right. Any change in use or operator would have to go back to BSA. And BSA is very strict on the fact that schools in commercial districts or schools in mixed use buildings require separated stairs and elevators.
Okay, so with that in mind, how difficult would it be if a school decided not to come in there to convert this back into a business or an office? Because I don't see, how would the connections be made at that point?
It would have to be utilized.
Let me just finish. I don't quite, I mean, then there would have to be construction that would go on. And my concern is that the expense of moving in there under those circumstances would be large for a business. And I'm worried about it laying fallow if in the event that the school moves out.
Right, so it would require, if it's not a, so first of all, it would only be a community facility that can occupy this space. And the expense is something that the ownership took upon themselves, realizing that this is a tenant that has a well-established business, a well-established school, and anticipates, being in this location for a very long time.
I'm confused as to how it can only be a community facility. Why is that?
Just because the commercial FAR is already used up with the commercial spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bump up in the CA2 district that only allows for certain community facilities. So the conversion of these spaces would have to be to a different community facility use.
but the point is that that's very limited. And I mean, if the school isn't there, I mean, let's say the school wasn't there right now. Okay, they weren't doing it. What would they be constructing there? They'd be constructing an office building, right?
They would construct medical offices, doctor's offices, other types of schools, other types of community facilities, houses of worship, along those lines.
All right, but it would not be a business usage. It would be all those, including the medical, would be a community, right?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Dean has your hand up.
Yes, I have two questions. Do you plan on including any UPK classes? Because the age is the same age. And the second question is, where is your second means of egress?
Okay,
On
so
the side.
yeah, second means of egress I can answer. UPK, I'll defer to Jeannie, but you see the staircases over here?
Yes?
These staircases will have emergency push bars, and those are the second means of egress that go to an alley over here that exits to the street.
Okay.
And Jeannie is with us, she's on mute, but she can talk to the UPK aspect of the school. She unmutes herself.
Okay. Okay, sorry about that. It took me a second to figure that out. So the UPK, with COVID right now, we are not providing those classes full time. We do them in certain locations where we have the demand. So it will depend on the school. If the school starts to fill up and they feel that they can substantiate the cost, yes, they will offer it. So at this point, it's undetermined.
Thank you.
Michael Devine.
Hi, two questions. Am I correct in looking at these plans? There's no outdoor space for the kids in this daycare?
So it's to be determined based on DEP review, but that side yard over here is potentially going to be an outdoor space, but we do have over here an indoor play area for the kids.
Okay. Second question, it was, I don't know if you know the answer to this. Did the original developer of the building, was it their intention to have a school move into this building while before they built?
I don't think it was, but the opportunity arose and the developer is doing the construction for the school to entertain the school. I think it was anticipated as a community facility space, like the fourth floor, but the school came along and it became a good match.
Stephanie and then Anne.
Okay, I have two questions. One, you said that there are 152 students at this time. Is it possible for the school to expand beyond that number?
So it's 152 students at capacity.
Okay, got
The
it.
building's not built, the building's not occupied. At capacity, based on the ratio, Department of Health and Article 47 have a student to teacher ratio
Yes.
and size of classroom ratio. Based on that, the max capacity of students would be 152.
Okay, understood. And then this is either for Doris or Josephine. A couple of years ago, a UPK opened up on Fifth Avenue, and I think, was it 85th Street? It was like a storefront. Were there any adverse situations, or what was the feedback on that? Is it still there? And what is it like to have a school in the middle of that area?
So it's still there. And we have not received any complaints. We actually have heard positive things from some parents whose children attend there. It's a small PK, and I'm not aware of any complaints there.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Anne?
Okay, this question is with regard to potential recusal in the committee. Is Bricolage the architectural firm for the new building or for your application?
Both.
Thank you.
Question, is this school a not-for-profit or for-profit?
For profit.
Okay.
Question?
Yeah, Steve?
Yeah, could you just remind me, this is on 89th Street and 5th, what's across the street from it on 5th?
Post office.
The post office. Okay, so that's what they're building there. Okay, I
There's a
figured
post
that one.
office, there's also a Lucille Roberts and another school.
I'm just trying to locate it in my head. What what is the actual as of right zoning on there? I think you mentioned it earlier, but what is the as of right zoning there right now?
Are you asking the zoning district or the floor areas?
No, just the as of right district. What can be built there is what I'm trying to.
C2 district.
Pardon me?
See, it's the CA2.
Okay, so it's a business CA2 business, correct?
Right.
Commercial.
Commercial district, CA2.
All right. This is not as of right in that district?
The building is as of right. The
Yes,
use
the-
is not.
The use is not.
There's a special permit dispensation from the city, which we're asking for, which is granted for certain commercial districts and certain manufacturing districts for school uses.
Mm-hmm. And he has no other tenants at this time?
Nothing yet. The building's under construction.
Okay, thank you.
It was complete last time I saw it.
It's basically complete. We're doing the construction here. I don't believe that there are any tenants in the building yet.
No. Dean, you still have your hand up? Was that from before? Okay, you're down. I don't see any other hands up.
It looked like it was complete.
The building, yeah.
It looks
not-
last time, it's near
not-
completion, substantial completion.
Right.
It definitely is near substantial completion for sure. The picture I showed, you can see by the picture that it was, which was taken a while ago, that it was already near completion.
I think Doris put her hand up.
Yeah, I have a question. Learning Tree has another facility within our community board. What is the capacity at that location, which is on 69th Street and 10th Avenue? Can you tell us about the number of students there and the usage and any issues in the community? Excuse me.
I will defer to Jeannie on this one.
Sorry, it takes me a second to unmute because I'm in a lobby where Christmas music is. We have a few locations in that area. One of them is in Astoria, and then I think we have another one that is fairly close that is not completed yet. Which one are you referring to so I can give you more
That's
details?
the one that is fairly close. So the one in Community Board 10 at Bay Ridge Avenue and 10th Avenue is not yet complete?
Is it the one on 11th Avenue, 11th
Okay,
Street?
between 10th and 11th. Okay, yes.
Yes, it's still under construction. It will be a corporate location. So we anticipate probably having close to 105 kids at that location. It is on 2 floors. And that's all I can tell you because it's not finalized yet.
That's interesting. Thank you. For the rest of the committee, I saw that on their website and I asked Josephine to look for any concerns at that location. And she did an open data search as there were none, and now we know why, because it's not open yet.
Yep.
So we don't know what their history is about, and my concern would be about drop off and pick up and the issues surrounding that.
So I want to just mention to the committee that 89th Street between 4th and 5th Avenue, which is the corner, which is the where this property lies. A number of years ago, I think it's 3 years now, the Department of Transportation, the Community Board approved a pedestrian safety change at the intersection of 89th and 4th. And as part of that safety improvement project, 89th Street between 4th and 5th Avenue's direction was changed from westbound to eastbound. And following that improvement, there's been a lot of, improvement in pedestrian safety, both at the school that's off of 4th Avenue on 89th Street. As Jay said, just to remind board members that there is a pre-K site on that corner at the other end, on the 4th Avenue end. So this proposal is for the 5th Avenue, and meaning that, drop off would be on the right side of the building, which would be the passenger side of any vehicle.
Joseph, is that the same location where Bay Ridge Prep was looking to build the high school there?
No, that's across the street. It's on the same block, 89th Street between 4th and 5th. So it would be opposite. The Bay Ridge Prep site was opposite, and that was the same type of special permit application. Bay Ridge Prep is no longer pursuing that location.
Nice. Okay.
Can I see the lot layout again that Jay? Thank you.
Let me see if I could zoom in. Hang on. You're talking just the.
I want to see like Fifth Avenue where the location is.
Yeah. So this
Okay,
is
and Joe, where was Bay Ridge Prep again? Remind me.
somewhere around.
Yes, right where his hands is.
Mhm.
It straddled. It
It
straddled.
was
the
across
building.
89th Street.
Yes.
Correct. And on the corner, that is the district, community district 20's office.
Yes.
And it's a pre-K early childhood center on the corner of 4th and 89th Street.
Do we have any information as to what's going to happen with the vacant lot over there, where Santander used to be?
No. I do know that the School Construction Authority was looking at that location. I don't know what its status is, though.
And also remember also that the dealership across the street on Fifth Avenue, that also vacate the building. So that's also, we don't know who's going there as well.
Right. Again, the Zoning and Land Use Committee has identified this area, the C8, as we call it, the C82 triangle. There are many vacant spaces, large development sites in that triangle. There's been some challenges in securing some of these large commercial tenants. We've talked about that.
The C8 district in general is really viewed as somewhat of an antiquated zoning district. It has the special permit to allow for the schools, realizing that there's a need and that it can facilitate that goal.
Why are you saying that it's antiquated?
Because it only allows for a very specific amount of community facility and a very specific amount of, types of commercial, where you're not going to necessarily have small retail there. You won't necessarily have, a large spread of community facility, and you can't have any residential.
I'm very concerned about the traffic. It's going to be very crowded. It's crowded as it is right now, and it's going to be very difficult as the parents, they bring the kids early in the morning or a pickup in the afternoon. And that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, to be an advocate, if you had an alternate business, whether a medical office or another community type facility, you're going to have an equal amount of traffic. To me, that's kind of a moot point. Look at the type of businesses you can put in this establishment facility.
Yeah, but you're going to have 152 kids coming there daily. Bring them brought there and pick up from there. And it's going to be, even though it's, within the district, I don't think anybody's going to come there with a 2-year-old walking, or is going to come with a car and going to pick up their kid with a car.
We're anticipating, based on our research, based on our knowledge of the area, and based on our knowledge of our facilities, that we'll have about 70% of the students coming either by foot or by mass transit. There's also a significant spread of when the students will come and leave. We anticipate the arrival times start at 6:30 in the morning and finish by 9:30 in the morning, and the dismissals between 3:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. So you're not going to have 150 kids at one time coming and going from this location.
I see Dean and Steve have their hands up. Dean?
Nick, I don't disagree with you, but thinking back, almost every school that's been built in our district, we've had the same concern about. You know, it's not suitable. There's a lot of traffic, and yet after the buildings go up and the facilities are open, we rarely get a complaint about that. So I don't disagree with you, but I think history shows us that after the facility is open, that we don't really get complaints about that.
I agree with you, Dean, but again, if you remember on 18 and 4th Avenue, the traffic direction was changed to help the, to make it easier.
Yeah.
Here is already, what are you going to do? What the DOT is going to do? You have the post office, you have a double park, a triple park, you have the bus stops there, and now you're going to bring, the school there, and God knows what's going to happen with the vacant lot, who is going to be the tenant on the other side. It's going to be, it's like you're going to be on 5th Avenue in Manhattan, where nothing's going to be moving there.
Very possible.
Let's see, Steve, you have your hand raised. Was that from before?
It was, but I might as well use it. I understand Nick's concern, but as long as people keep making babies, we have to put them somewhere and we have to teach them. And it seems to me that this is a community facility, what it's intended for. It seems, I mean, almost anything that you put there, a house of worship, whatever, is going to have issues that are going to have something to do with traffic. I mean, I guess we could just turn it into a farm, but it doesn't seem to work well. So I would support this.
Jana, you have your hand raised?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm sorry I'm late. I just have a quick question because I'm a visual person, so I'm like looking at that area. The school, it's an elementary school, from what I understand.
It's a daycare.
A daycare center.
Daycare center, and it's like where 7-Eleven is, right? You guys know, like where PS2.
Yeah, no, it's not. This is off of 5th Avenue. 7-Eleven is on 4th
Okay.
Avenue.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Doris?
Oh, yeah, I'm super interested. Steve, your hand is still up. You have another question? Okay, I do have a question. From Jane from Learning Tree.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It's for Learning Tree. What is the breakdown on most of your facilities on the age groups of the children involved? I mean, we know that you're from 6 months to 5 years old, but as a rule, what percentage are infants, toddlers, and preschoolers? Because I think that impacts the drop-off issues.
So, Jeannie, do you know the answer to that question?
Yes. So we typically only have 8 infants, and they are the ones that take the longest to unload. But typically they come by stroller, and I want to reiterate that we have other locations that are in Astoria, and they are right by the subway, and there is no parking whatsoever, no drop-off spots at all. And the parents do come, they walk them, and they bring them in strollers. So we have 8 infants, and then as it goes up, we have twaddlers and toddlers, and we usually have about 12 of those in each room. So in this particular instance, I believe we have 2 twaddler rooms and 2 toddler rooms. So we have about 24 kids that are under the age of 2. And then as you go up, you have preschoolers, and the preschoolers are usually the larger classrooms. They usually have 24 kids in a classroom, and those kids are usually much quicker to drop off because they are used to going to school, and they are used to saying goodbye to their parents, and they're quick and easy. And with COVID, most of the kids don't come into the classrooms the same way that we used to do it. They are dropped off in the vestibule, and their temperatures are taken, their parents sign them in. So it's a much quicker process, and I don't know how long that'll last, but we are looking at putting those procedures into place long term. So our drop-offs will be even quicker and faster than they were before.
Okay, Doris, you have Dan Heddix has his hand raised.
Yeah, I just say that, especially considering that we're expecting a lot of the parents to be local, I'd almost consider the traffic to be very elastic, where if there is a problem, if it does generate more traffic than we're expecting, the parents will notice that the first couple of times they drop off. And because they have so many options, we have the bus there. It's mostly within walking distance of everyone who's going to be coming, especially knowing, thank you, that not many are going to be infant. They will change up their behavior and it will manage itself out because it is such an elastic situation. You see hard traffic numbers mainly when it's very long distances where there are no other options. The fact that we're putting this in such a central location, which is why we had that commercial district in that triangle in the center there in the first place, is because it is so accessible. I'd imagine that any issues with traffic would essentially self-resolve within the first couple of months, which is what we see when we build a new school anyway. Exactly the same issue, which is why I think we don't see that many complaints after one is built, is that everyone kind of figures out how to live with it. So I don't see any problem with traffic. This seems really good to me.
Great.
I just want
Doris? Oh, go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that I live on 79th Street and 3rd Avenue, which is directly next to a child care center that seems to be of a comparable size. I'm not sure if I mean, it is intended as a place for people to leave their children during the day when they go to work. And I have to say that you never know that the place was even there. And there is no, I mean, the subway is actually about 5 blocks away. It's not an issue. It just hasn't been an issue at all. And we had the same concerns at first that people would be, you know, lined up and the whole thing. And there's probably at least 100 kids or more there every day.
Thank you. Doris, I don't see anyone else's hand raised.
Okay. I think we have effectively covered the issues, all the issues that I have thought of. And you have brought up more for the zoning land use committee. Do I have a motion? Any motion? Anyone want to make a motion?
So moved.
Motion to accept.
Motion to accept as written.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
We've had a lot of discussion, but we have a motion. So any further discussion?
Yeah, if I can just say, the reason I'm making the motion is because I believe that exactly what we're talking about. It's C8 district. It's intended for this kind of a thing, for crowded area and this kind of thing. It does not infringe in any way on the local residential population. It's well away from it. I think that under the circumstances, and as I said before, we need schools, we need daycare centers, and this is something that is needed. I would, for those reasons, I would support my own motion.
I hope so, Steve.
Since we have okay, very good. Do you want to do we'll do a roll call vote?
Sure.
Doris?
In favor.
Michael Devine?
In favor.
Ann Flutico?
Recusal.
Barbara Gurmak?
She's muted.
Barbara, you take yourself off mute? Okay, Steve?
I do want to point out for Ann that the reason for recusal has to be stated.
Ann? Oh, I lost. All right, we'll go back to Ann with that.
The architect of record is a colleague and friend.
Thank you. Barbara Gurmak?
Yes, in favor.
Stephanie Mahaney?
In favor.
Anthony Marino,
In favor.
Susan Pulaski,
In favor.
Dean Rosina,
Yes.
Joe Tulamello.
In favor.
Okay, motion carries.
What about me?
Oh, Larry. No, you're not on this committee, Larry. This is just for zoning and land use committee. Sorry.
No.
Okay, you're on the next. Now we're starting the 7:30 portion, which is a joint zoning and land use environmental committee meeting. Doris, I'll hand over to you part two. Thank you, Jay. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
Pleasure to see you. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great.
All right, have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Oh, I have to get back to my old notes. Thank you all. Now we're here to discuss and I would like to share this with my fellow chair, Jana Talbot. Thank you, Adele. And we're here to discuss the flood resiliency rezoning. Do we have any presentation, Josephine?
Yeah, so I want to say that Sanmati is here from Department of City Planning. I want to also welcome the Environmental Committee and share to both chairs that we have a quorum in both committees. So that's very exciting. So Sanmati, I see that you're here.
Yes. Hello, everyone.
Hi. Are you going to be giving a presentation this evening?
Yeah, I'm going to be presenting, and I'm joined with my colleague, Kate Richards, who has worked on this text amendment and would be here for any questions which the committee may have later on.
Great, thank you. So you're free to share. You're able to share on your screen.
Okay. Can you give me the access? Okay. Yeah, I think I have it.
Yes, I gave you access. Great. Dan, I know you're proud, huh?
Zoom, everyone's come such a long way with Zoom.
Such a long way with Zoom.
Proud
yes.
of the entire board.
Let me know when you see it.
Okay.
All right, we got it.
Okay.
I think you're on slide 11 though. Yeah. Just may have to... Great.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. We are very excited to present the zoning for coastal flood resiliency citywide zoning text amendment. This, as you know, is a proposal developed after years of ongoing public engagement with the goal of promoting resiliency for the city's building stock. And this also proposes updates to the zoning resolution, Article 6, Chapter 4, and other related sections. So shortly after Hurricane Sandy happened, New York City put together zoning text amendments in order to help in the recovery and rebuilding efforts. However, in the situation and considering the time constraints, this was done on a temporary basis. And now those flexibilities are beginning to expire. And thus this proposal would help make the post-Sandy provisions permanent. And also it would expand them so that communities have a greater flexibility to adapt. And this is based on all the feedback which we received with the stakeholders, the community members, the businesses, on what provisions they wanted greater flexibility with, as we'll see in the presentation. And ultimately, this will help everyone living and working in the floodplain area to design as well as retrofit the buildings so that it would reduce future damage from coastal storms, would be resilient in the long term by accounting for future risks from climate change, and also, of course, potentially to help save on the flood insurance costs. So this slide gives a very nice, concise overview of the main goals of the text amendment. And so these are more of strategies. They were established after a long and robust study and stakeholder research process. So the first is to encourage resiliency throughout the current and future floodplains. And this is really people living in and around floodplains want to be able to prepare buildings for flooding, even if they are not located in what is currently determined to be the high risk flood zone. And people also, moving on to the second one, people, this is to support the long-term resilient design of all building types. People want the option to raise the occupiable or ground floor space a little higher than the current flood level that FEMA projects, because they have seen higher flood levels already. And as we know, with the climate change and the risks involved, that level and risk is expected to only grow in future. The third is to allow for adaptation over time. And so what this is about is just to give business owners and homeowners the option to invest in these measures incrementally, because sometimes the costs are huge, and this provision would allow them to make incremental changes and adapt over time, making it more affordable. And the fourth, facilitate future recovery by reducing regulatory obstacles. We, as from this whole exercise, one of the things which we realized was that city needs to be able to respond faster and reduce the bureaucratic and other hurdles. And this would allow the city to do this, and this addresses some of the issues which were faced. So the first goal is to encourage resiliency throughout the current and future floodplains, and it deals with the applicability. So what you see here is the dotted line is where the current rules apply. And this picture is a great visual because it shows that the flooding extended beyond the dotted line. So what this means is that for any lot which is located either in the high risk or the moderate flood risk plains would be allowed to use the proposed special options for resilient building design. And just for those who are not aware, the 0.2% floodplain serves as a proxy for the high-end projection of 2050, and the 1% annual chance floodplain, allowing the city to advance the resiliency in the longer term. So this would really go a long way further, where we are already allowing those areas which are considered moderate risk right now to be included in all those provisions. So this shows the areas which the blue ones is the high risk, and the lighter green one is the moderate risk. So this is a map which shows the applicability in Bay Ridge, and as you can see, it's a very small portion really. To the top, the image on the left, it shows where the rules are available for buildings currently, which is within the 1% floodplain. The image on the right shows the portions in orange is where the rules would apply. So it expands the area to the 0.2% floodplain, and in Bay Ridge, it's very small portion. So the top, the image to the right shows just, I think that's Bay Ridge Avenue, just at the intersection of Shore Road. So there are maybe 6 to 7 lots which are covered in that area. So this goal is about supporting long-term resiliency design for all building types, and it includes a number of strategies. For the purposes of this presentation and considering the time constraints, we'll be focusing on those which have some applicability in Bay Ridge. So the ground floors, these regulations are a set of rules that would help promote a good long-term resilient design and good neighborhood streetscapes. So the current rules allow the ground floor in existing buildings that are retrofitted to be wet to be exempted from floor area. So this helps buildings become more resilient without having property owners to have to lose a chunk of their buildings in the process. The proposal would allow such exemptions to apply to both existing and new proposed buildings. And the intent is really to apply the allowance more consistently and support the new buildings adapting to climate change. And the current rules also include flood area exemptions for spaces that are dry, flood-proofed, and this is to promote active uses at the street level. And so moving on, regarding the building envelope, these optional rules would allow building owners to physically elevate habitable spaces and other building support features above expected flood elevations. So currently the 2013 flood text allows the maximum height to be measured from the design flood elevation, which is the dotted blue line which you see. And the design flood elevation in new or substantially renovated buildings, it's the minimum height at which the residential units may be constructed and utilities like boiler, water heater, etc. may be located. So this allows the minimum height for dry and wet floodproofing measures. However, so currently this is only available for buildings in the 1% floodplain. That is the area which is within the 1% annual chance of flooding. So the proposal would allow the buildings within the 0.2% or the 500-year floodplain, also known as the moderate risk floodplain, to also take advantage of this rule. So, so while we have all these rules, we recognize that not all buildings in all situations would be helped by the provisions and the options which are envisioned and anticipated are required. And so the proposal would allow, or rather continue to offer, discretionary pathways in the form of BSS special permits to ensure that certain unique situations which has not been anticipated or expected, or any hardships based on lot issues or special constraints can get relief from certain zoning provisions in order to meet the standards for construction which are given in the floodplain. So this goal allows for adaptation over time through incremental developments and retrofits. So what this, during the surveys, what was found that some of the business owners have certain, it's difficult for them to raise the entire portions up. So, so this provision would offer either neighborhood services or those that are part of a large industrial economy of the city. Many of these buildings cannot be completely elevated or dry flood proof. And that's because it's too expensive or because of some other needs. But because many of these business owners would like to raise the critical spaces and equipments above the flooding, so that this would minimize the damages which would be caused by flooding. So the key spaces that are located within the basements or cellars would be allowed to be elevated above the flood levels in these cases. So also the flood protection measures, there are certain additional provisions that will enable different types of flood protection measures to be implemented. For example, this shows an allowance for flood panels and landscape berms to be considered as permitted obstructions in open areas. So this just gives more flexibility for the location of these equipments, and it would also allow spaces used for the storage of panels to be exempted from floor area to enable on-site storage. So there's just basically it's opposite of penalizing the property owners. This just gives them more flexibility, and they would be able to store on site. So moving on to the fourth goal category. So this is interesting. This applies not to a particular area, but across the city. So what Sandy showed was that the storm's effect can go beyond the floodplains, especially regarding the issues with energy grid. So the proposal would allow power systems like generators, solar energy systems, batteries, and other storage systems to be considered as permitted obstruction in open areas across all zoning districts. So this is really a emergency planning measure, which would ensure that resources are distributed in all areas. And accessibility. So to ensure that all areas of the city can provide ADA access, the proposal would classify both ramps and lifts as permitted obstructions in all required open areas to facilitate accessible design. So another important issue is how disasters, especially those that require evacuation of residents, how it impacts vulnerable populations. So these storms and hurricanes have exposed the difficulty facing nursing home residents in areas of high risk flooding. So nursing home populations require continual medical care, and research has shown that this dependency can be strained whether the nursing homes shelter in place or evacuate prior to coastal storm. Therefore, the city believes it would be appropriate to limit the growth of nursing homes in high-risk areas to lessen the risks and logistical challenges of evacuation. So the proposal would prohibit the development of new nursing homes within the 1% or high-risk floodplain and other selected geographies which are known to have limited vehicular access or have certain challenges during evacuation. And just to note that the existing facilities would still be operating, they would be able to conduct enlargements and modest improvements. So this would not impact the existing nursing homes. So I think, yeah. So this summary, this is just next steps. The citywide text amendment has been referred out on October 19th to all the community boards, borough boards, and borough president for 60 days. And the deadline to receive the recommendations is December 28th. So we are hoping the community boards throughout the city would vote and give their recommendation and support this very necessary and useful text amendment. And with that, I would end the presentation and we can take any questions.
May I speak?
Yes,
I have
Steve.
to. I have to.
San Maria, what this boils down to is that this would basically allow the owners of these properties, whether they exist or are going to be built, to raise their homes above the expected flood if they're in a flood zone. So above the expected flood, so that when a flood does come, it will flow under the house rather than through it. Is that correct? That's basically what it comes down to.
I'll also ask Kate to weigh in. This depends upon, I think, also the dry and wet, what kind of flood proofing is done. But yes, it basically allows elevation so that it would be out of harm's way. And Kate, please feel free to weigh in.
Uh,
I would also add that
I,
it
the way I
allows,
see it is that this would not increase population. It would basically be what we see right now, but it would prevent a lot of destruction and a lot of money being spent afterwards if we would have done this like 100 years ago. I also point out that these methods are used in many places that have flood zones, in particular on Long Island, where the zoning allows exactly what they're talking about. And it has no great impact one way or the other as far as whether you think it's beautiful or not beautiful. And I think that it makes a lot of sense. So I would support this also.
Kate, I'm sorry.
I just to add, this doesn't change the zoning districts in any way. It just makes it more flexible for property owners and homeowners if they want to do resiliency retrofits on their homes, on their buildings, which can include elevation, but there are other strategies as well. And part of this proposal is allowing for people to undertake sort of partial resiliency measures, so that maybe they can't do everything all at once and they aren't going to fully elevate their home, but they might relocate their boiler so it's not in the basement, things like that.
Great, thank you. Doris, we have two hands raised, Richard Day and then Dan Heddix.
Great. Hi, thank you for the presentation. I have a question. So I understand that all of these measures could be, cost prohibitive for someone who currently lives in one of these areas. Like you're saying, you're allowing for incremental retrofits. But is there a reason why we're not requiring these things to be in place for new construction?
So currently what is required, Appendix G of the city's building code is the flood resilient construction standards. And that is required right now for properties in the 1% annual chance floodplain or the high risk flood zone that Samati was describing. That's already the standard, and that's not changing. What is changing is we're expanding the territory for who's allowed to take advantage of those standards. So not just the 1%, but people in the 0.2% chance floodplain will be able to do some of those things as well. And it will continue to be required in the building code for new construction in the 1% annual chance floodplain.
Okay, thank you.
Dan?
Yeah, and actually that swings over into one of my questions. Sorry, I have a cat. Which is the 1% and the 100-year and the 500-year floodplains. I'm wondering if you guys could explain a little bit, because I know sometimes that can be confusing for people. They think it's going to happen every 100 years. That those are just terms, right? That the actual probabilities are generally much more frequent than that.
That's a very good question. Thank you for giving the chance for us to clarify. And that's, I think, part of why we like to use 1% and 0.2%.
Yeah.
So 1% or the 1% annual chance floodplain or the 100-year floodplain means that in any given year, there's a 1% chance it will flood. And the 500-year or 0.2% chance floodplain, in any given year, there's a 0.2% chance that it will flood.
Yeah.
And that doesn't account for sea level rise projections and climate change. That's a right now look, not a future projection.
Yeah, because I know that the New York City floodplains had only been updated. I think before Sandy, they hadn't been updated for 30 years, and they were updated after Sandy, have not been updated since. But this is such a climate science is so fast moving. It just makes a lot of sense that we'd push the ability to take advantage of these kind of things further out to the 0.2, 0.1% floodplain. Just because that might be much more frequent than we think. I know that the National Academy of Sciences, I think in 2015, had said that basically that floodplain would probably be flooded every 25 years, give or take, in the New York City region. So this just seems like already I'd say we should be going further, but this is a good step in that direction.
Thank you. Doris, I don't see anyone else's hand raised.
Well, I have a few questions. The community board, the zoning land use committee reviewed this 3 years ago in October 2017 and supported it. But in that time, are there any changes to the flood plan in community board 10 since 2017?
Has the
And
flood
second,
plan itself
if
changed?
there are flood changes in the floodplain, if the floodplain is redefined, would DCP come back to the community and how it impacts them?
So right now, there's the 2007 flood insurance rate maps, which are what FEMA uses for flood insurance. And the city uses the 2015 preliminary flood insurance rate maps for our building code and zoning regulation purposes. So that wouldn't have changed since 2017. The way this zoning is written, if the flood maps were to change in the future, the zoning text is written so that it's, as the floodplain changes, the applicability will expand to cover new floodplain.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Second question. You said there's concern about evacuation from nursing homes. Is this only for nursing homes or any other senior facilities, senior housing, assisted living? Is it specific to nursing homes?
It's just nursing homes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Stephanie Mahaney has her hand raised.
Yes, just a clarification, please. With this new, or with the adoption of the text amendment, are homeowners or current homeowners and business owners mandated to make these changes? If so, is there a timeline for it?
That's a good question. None of these rules require any new changes, new things that people have to do to their buildings or properties. It's really about allowing more people to take advantage of some of these options, but they are optional. All that's required is what is currently in the building code for flood resilient construction.
So even if a homeowner were to go and sell their house, there would be no obligation to bring it up to a compliance level?
That's correct. New construction or a substantial improvement to a home, which is an improvement that's 50% of the property value, home value. So unless you're undertaking really major renovations to your home.
Okay, thank you.
If you were just to sell your house, you wouldn't have to make these changes.
Michael Devine, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I'm wondering if having the text amendment, if there's any way of knowing if they would impact like insurance rates, would there be this expectation from insurance companies that, these homeowners should be making these changes to their houses? And I don't know if anybody would have any insight on that.
Many of these provisions were sort of developed with the idea that if people do undertake them, it can help potentially reduce their flood insurance rates. But to my knowledge, there wouldn't be the fact that you are able to do something and are not doing it. I don't think that would affect your flood insurance. It's meant to help bring costs down.
Okay. Stephanie, do you have another question? Your hand is still raised.
Actually, I do, since it's still up. I was just curious, if nursing homes are restricted from being built in those areas, are there any provisions or resources to help nursing homes find other places to be built if there is a need for them?
Not tied to this text. I don't know a lot about siting for new nursing homes, but it's something that is addressed at the state level. And I think the state has to determine that there's a need in a particular location. That wouldn't be changing from this zoning text, but I can find more information on that for you if you are curious.
I am curious. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I would just comment that if you go to Sheepshead Bay, there are a number of nursing homes there, and they were built there some years ago because they were out of the way, not easily accessible, and so therefore were easier to acquire the land.
Mhm.
And I think these are areas that are definitely in the flood zone. And I think anything that we're looking at in the future, that will be definitely considered. I think because of the location of many nursing homes, I think they were probably built about 20 years ago, that this will all be considered in any future sightings.
Okay, I don't see any more questions.
Okay. So we have a motion, we have the issues on the floor. Do we have a motion on the floor? Is anyone willing to make a motion?
Come on, it's Dean's turn.
I can make the motion.
Okay, Anne?
Yes. Motion to support as submitted.
And I'll stay second.
Okay, I think we could do a raise hands with everyone. We do an all in favor? Okay, looks like everyone, it's unanimous.
Nope, recusal
Oh, one recusal,
for Larry.
Larry.
So the motion carries.
Thank you all so much for your
No
time.
reason.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kate.
And
Have a good one.
since I'm no longer chair, I don't see the environmental committee as much as I used to, and I miss you. And I love all the issues and what you're doing. And thank you.
It was really nice to see everyone tonight.
Good seeing everybody.
Okay, I guess we need a motion to
Good night.
adjourn.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I will second.
Yes, Dan second. Okay, have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Take care.